My fiancée refused to cook for me and my daughter. She said, "Your kid, your problem," while my sick child waited alone. I understood. Some people do marry a family, they just marry the benefits. Before we begin, don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. Sometimes you don't see who someone really is until they're living under the same roof as you. I always believed love revealed itself over time, but what I learned after my fiancé moved in showed me how dangerous that belief can be. What started as small moments of discomfort slowly uncovered a pattern of emotional neglect, financial exploitation, and fake warmth that finally forced me to make the hardest decision of my life. I never imagined I'd have to choose between the woman I planned to marry and my own child, but the moment she looked at me without hesitation and said, "She's not my responsibility," after refusing to feed my 11-year-old daughter, I knew I'd ignored warning signs that were impossible to excuse anymore. My name is Daniel. I'm 37 years old, and I've been raising my daughter Lily on my own since she was 6, ever since my wife Anna passed away after a long fight with cancer. The years that followed were some of the darkest of my life. It was just Lily and me, learning how to survive without the person who had always been our emotional center. I burned meals more times than I can count, struggled through school mornings trying to fix hair I barely understood, and attended every parent-teacher meeting alone while other parents whispered about the widowed dad, who always looked exhausted and slightly out of place. 2 years ago, I met Victoria at a professional conference. She was charming, confident, and quick-witted. She worked remotely as a freelance marketer, and at first, everything felt effortless. She joined us for lazy weekend breakfasts, laughed along when Lily made silly jokes about her teachers, and even helped Lily pick out a new backpack before the school year started. For a while, it felt like life was finally giving us a second chance at being whole again. When I proposed last spring, it felt right, like we were finally moving forward as a family. Victoria moved into my house about 3 months after the engagement, and that's when things began to shift. At first, it was subtle. She'd wear noise-canceling headphones when Lily came home from school. She'd suddenly schedule work calls during dinner, even though she set her own hours. Little things that felt off but easy to rationalize away. Our household routine wasn't complicated. Lily ate dinner at 6 because she had soccer practice at 7:30 twice a week. My job required me to be out of the house with unpredictable hours, while Victoria worked from her laptop at home with full control over her schedule. Despite that, I handled everything: breakfast before work, packing Lily's lunch, prepping dinner ingredients early so I could cook quickly after getting home. When I gently suggested Victoria help with meals occasionally, she brushed it off, saying she wasn't good in the kitchen. But it wasn't just that she didn't cook. She refused to cook for Lily or for me. Anytime I brought up sharing responsibilities, she'd remind me that Lily was my child and therefore my obligation. As if making a simple meal for an 11-year-old was some unreasonable demand she'd never agreed to. 3 weeks ago, I got stuck in traffic due to road construction that turned the highway into a crawling nightmare. I watched the clock inch closer to 6, knowing Lily would be hungry. I called Victoria and calmly asked if she could boil some pasta or reheat leftovers. Nothing fancy, just something warm so Lily wouldn't have to fend for herself. She said she was working, even though I could hear a TV show playing in the background. When I gently pushed back, she snapped. She said she never signed up to be Lily's mother, then dropped the words I still can't forget. "She's your kid, she's your problem." Then she hung up. Sitting in traffic with my hands trembling on the steering wheel, I called Lily instead. She answered cheerfully and told me not to worry, that she'd made herself a peanut butter sandwich. Then she asked if I was okay, because she could hear something was wrong in my voice. I got home an hour and a half later to find Lily at the kitchen table doing homework, crumbs from her sandwich still on the plate. Victoria was on the couch with a glass of wine, laptop open, barely acknowledging my presence. That night, I didn't argue. I cooked Lily a real dinner, sat with her while she talked about her science assignment, tucked her into bed, and read 2 chapters from the book we'd been reading together. But my mind wouldn't stop racing. Victoria had been home all day. She'd walked past Lily countless times and couldn't be bothered to put food in the oven for a child who never complained and always said thank you. From that point on, I couldn't unsee the pattern. Victoria stepping over Lily's backpack instead of moving it. Scheduling gym sessions exactly when Lily needed rides and I was stuck in meetings. Suddenly needing urgent work calls whenever Lily asked for homework help, things that could have been solved in seconds. I started paying closer attention. Mentioning Lily's weekend game and watching Victoria instantly plan a day out. asking her to pick Lily up once and hearing excuses, only to later see Instagram posts of manicures and cafe visits. The real issue wasn't meals or rides. It was what Victoria said when she believed she was being logical. Whenever I talked about building a shared life, she'd insist she was my partner, not Lily's parent, as if caring for my child somehow threatened her role. One Saturday morning, after Lily left for a sleepover, I sat Victoria down and asked her honestly what she envisioned for our future and her role in Lily's life after marriage. She looked confused, then said, "I agreed to marry you. I didn't agree to raise someone else's kid." The way she said someone else's kid hit me like a punch. Lily wasn't a stranger, she was my world. That night after Victoria went to bed, I went through our finances, really went through them, and what I found made my stomach drop. Over 6 months, Victoria had charged nearly $18,000 to the credit cards I'd added her to. Designer clothes, daily expensive coffee runs, spa days, home office furniture she barely used, and a $3,000 handbag bought the same week she refused to drive Lily to soccer. I stared at the numbers, realizing that money could have covered Lily's activities, boosted her college fund, or paid for the family trip I'd been planning. Instead, it went to someone who couldn't even warm leftovers for my child. The pattern was clear. She avoided every responsibility involving Lily but felt entitled to my finances. She wouldn't pick up prescriptions, wouldn't sign school forms, wouldn't buy Lily's favorite cereal, yet had no issue spending freely. Every time I raised concerns, the response was the same: Lily was my responsibility, but somehow my money was ours. One night after Lily was asleep, I tried one last calm conversation. I explained that being partners meant sharing life, including the child who came with me. Victoria rolled her eyes and said she was my wife, not a replacement parent, and that Lily already had one parent, and that was my job to deal with. When I finally asked her directly what she believed being a step-parent actually meant, what she thought our household would look like once we were married, her answer stunned me. She said she assumed Lily would be off to college in a few years anyway, so it wasn't something we really needed to figure out long-term. My daughter was only 11 years old, and this woman was already mentally counting down until she could erase her from daily life. That was disturbing enough on its own, but what happened next sealed everything. The following Thursday afternoon, I got a call from Lily's school. She'd gotten sick in class and thrown up, and they needed someone to pick her up immediately. I was at a client site nearly 2 hours away and physically couldn't leave. So I did the only thing I could. I called Victoria. She was home, as usual, working from her laptop. I asked her calmly and clearly if she could please drive 10 minutes to the school and bring Lily home. She said she couldn't because she had a deadline. Normally that might have been understandable, except I knew her biggest client had disappeared weeks earlier, and she'd been spending most of her days watching reality TV while pretending to work. During the call, I could literally hear the television playing in the background. I recognized the theme song instantly, and yet she still insisted she was too busy to help my sick child. I had no choice but to call my brother, who lived 40 minutes away. He dropped everything, picked Lily up, and stayed with her all afternoon until I could get home. When I finally walked through the door that evening, Victoria didn't ask how Lily was feeling, didn't acknowledge what had happened at all. That was the moment something shifted inside me. This sharp, quiet realization that I had been trying to force a future with someone who viewed my daughter as a problem she wished would disappear. That weekend, I watched Victoria differently. I noticed how she would leave a room the second Lily entered it, how she'd put on headphones as soon as Lily started talking about her day, how she carefully structured her schedule to avoid any interaction with a child who simply wanted stability and belonging after already losing one parent. The following Monday morning, I made a decision. I called the credit card companies and canceled every card I'd added Victoria to. I didn't warn her. I didn't debate it. I just cut off her access to my finances, the same way she had cut herself off from any responsibility toward my child. She found out around lunchtime when her card was declined at some boutique downtown. She called me furious, screaming about financial abuse, humiliation, and how I had no right to make decisions without consulting her. I let her finish. Then I said very calmly, "My daughter isn't your responsibility, remember? Then your expenses aren't mine." The silence on the other end of the line was overwhelming. She tried to argue that we were partners and that partners shared money. I reminded her that partners also shared responsibility, and that she had been very clear about what she wasn't willing to share. An hour later, she showed up at my office, mascara streaked, putting on a performance about being blindsided and how we just needed better communication. I didn't argue. I simply showed her the spreadsheet I'd made. On one side, every instance she'd refused to help Lily. On the other, every charge she'd made on my cards, nearly $18,000 in 6 months. $18,000 while she couldn't spare half an hour to drive Lily to soccer. While she refused to order dinner when I was stuck at work. While she showed zero concern for a child who had already lost her mother. Her behavior changed instantly, and it was painfully obvious why. Suddenly she wanted to cook dinner every night. She started asking Lily about homework, volunteering to drive her places, even suggesting a mall trip together. Lily looked confused because Victoria had never shown interest before. Over the next week, Victoria played the role of devoted future stepmother, posting photos with Lily online, writing captions about blended family life. Cooking elaborate breakfasts that Lily barely touched, because Victoria had never bothered to learn what she actually liked. It was all an act, and that made me angrier than the neglect ever had. Before, at least, she had been honest about not caring. Now she was using my daughter as leverage to get her financial privileges back. I watched closely. I noticed the forced smiles, the constant phone checking during homework help. The bonding activities that conveniently doubled as shopping trips where she'd hint about things she wanted. Then one night, I overheard her on the phone with her sister. She said she just needed to keep pretending until I cooled off and restored her cards. She complained about how ridiculous it was that she had to fake concern for some kid, just to access what she believed was already her money since we were basically married. That conversation removed any remaining doubt. This wasn't someone who'd messed up and wanted to grow. This was someone who fundamentally viewed my daughter as an obstacle standing between her and the lifestyle she felt entitled to. No amount of staged affection would ever change that. Sudden kindness after losing access to money isn't growth, it's manipulation. Real change takes accountability and time, not a performance triggered by consequences. I knew then that the relationship had to end, but I also knew I needed to be careful. Something in my gut told me this wouldn't be simple. I started documenting everything, screenshots of texts where she complained about my baggage, copies of credit card statements with charges highlighted, and security cameras installed throughout the house. One camera covered the hallway leading to my home office, especially after she made an offhand comment about how the house was basically half hers since we were engaged. That decision turned out to be critical. 2 days later, I caught her on camera inside my office, photographing financial documents, digging through files related to the house deed and my investment accounts. She was clearly preparing something, building a case for what she believed she was owed once this relationship ended. That same week, I sat down with a lawyer and laid everything out. Every incident, every message, every receipt, every screenshot. I showed him the footage, the financial records, and explained exactly how things had been unfolding inside my home. He didn't sugarcoat anything. He told me I needed to remove Victoria from the house immediately, before she could claim residency, tenancy rights, or try to argue some form of common law partnership. He also advised me to document every interaction she had ever had with Lily, just in case she attempted to paint herself as a parental figure deserving of custody considerations. That sounded extreme until he explained that he'd seen situations spiral far worse than mine. I went home that night planning to end things calmly over the weekend. My intention was to keep it civil, give her a week to move out, and minimize the emotional damage for Lily. That plan didn't survive more than 24 hours. On Friday afternoon, Lily came home from school unusually quiet. She avoided eye contact, shuffled her feet, and eventually whispered that Victoria had talked to her. Lily told me Victoria said the problems between us were happening because being a stepmother was harder than she expected, and that maybe things would be easier if Lily stayed with her grandparents more often. My daughter stood there fighting tears, asking, without actually saying it, whether she was the reason my relationship was falling apart. Everything inside me went cold. I asked Lily to tell me exactly what was said. She explained that Victoria told her adult relationships need space, that kids don't always understand when their needs should come second, and that Lily was old enough now to be more independent. Victoria had even suggested that boarding school might be a good idea in a few years. This woman had told my child, my grieving 11-year-old child, that she was a problem to be managed, that her presence in her own home was an inconvenience, and that she should quietly remove herself so the adults could be happy. I walked straight into the living room where Victoria was scrolling on her phone and told her to pack her things. That night, immediately, she needed to leave my house. She looked genuinely confused and tried to act innocent, asking what was going on and why I was overreacting. I told her exactly what Lily had just told me. Her response was unbelievable. She said she was just being honest, that children need to learn the world doesn't revolve around them, and that she was helping Lily grow up faster. I gave her 2 hours to grab essentials. I told her I'd box up the rest of her belongings and have them delivered wherever she chose. She needed to be gone before I said something irreversible. She tried crying again, apologies. Claims of misunderstanding, promises that she loved me and wanted to fix things, I didn't engage. When she realized tears weren't working, she turned vicious, yelling that I owed her, that she'd supported me emotionally as a single parent, that I was throwing away everything she'd invested. I calmly reminded her that the only thing she'd invested was my money. I told her she could consider the nearly $18,000 she spent as severance pay for a role she never actually performed. She stormed out that night, screaming about lawyers, lawsuits, and how she'd take me for everything I had, insisting she had rights as my fiancée and I couldn't just discard her. The next morning, I changed the locks and installed a doorbell camera. Something told me this wasn't finished, and I was right. Victoria bombarded my phone with messages, one moment begging for forgiveness, the next threatening legal action. Her family joined in, sending long texts insisting she truly cared about Lily and just needed time to adjust. I didn't respond. My focus was on Lily, making sure she understood this wasn't her fault, that she was never a burden, and that any adult incapable of loving her had no place in our lives. 2 weeks later, the real chaos began. I received a formal demand letter from Victoria's attorney claiming she was entitled to financial compensation for her contributions to the household. They alleged she'd functioned as a domestic partner and caretaker and deserved a settlement. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. He laughed. He said it was one of the weakest claims he'd ever seen, especially given my extensive documentation showing her refusal to provide care of any kind. We filed a counterclaim. Included were the unauthorized credit card charges, her written statements dismissing Lily as not her problem, and the security footage of her searching through my private financial files without permission. Her case unraveled quickly. During discovery, messages surfaced where Victoria openly discussed marrying me for financial stability and eventually pushing Lily out so we could have freedom. Once her lawyer saw those messages, he reportedly advised her that she had no case and that she should be grateful I wasn't pursuing criminal charges. We settled out of court. Victoria was ordered to repay $4,800, a fraction of what she'd taken, but my lawyer said recovering anything was a win. More importantly, she had to sign a legally binding agreement stating she would never contact Lily again. That mattered more than money ever could. A restraining order followed shortly after Victoria showed up at Lily's school, claiming she just wanted a proper goodbye. The school contacted me immediately. That incident got her banned from school property and secured the legal protection needed to permanently keep her away from my daughter. 3 months later, our home is peaceful again. Lily is doing better in school, she laughs more, she feels safe. Our routines are back and I'm not dating, not because I'm bitter but because my priorities are exactly where they belong. This experience reinforced why documentation matters, and why protecting your child must always come before saving a relationship with someone who views them as an obstacle. The real win wasn't the settlement or the restraining order. It was a father choosing his child's emotional safety over his own loneliness. What are your thoughts on this story? Share your opinion in the comments. Hit like if this resonated with you, and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.